I was sitting at my sister-in-law's formal dinner party watching her wealthy friends laugh at my 11-year-old daughter, Emma, for bringing homemade cupcakes instead of store-bought dessert. Listening to them whisper loud enough for her to hear that some people just don't understand proper etiquette. Watching my daughter's face crumble as she tried not to cry. And I felt rage building in my chest because these people had no idea who they were mocking. Had no idea that my daughter had spent her entire Saturday baking those cupcakes with ingredients we carefully budgeted for. Had no idea she decorated each one by hand because she wanted to contribute something special. And they were treating her like she brought garbage to their table, but what they really didn't know was about to make this entire room go silent was that my daughter wasn't just some kid who didn't know better, she was a genius who just won a national science competition and received a full scholarship to a prestigious private school. And in about 10 minutes she was going to make every single person at this table feel like the small-minded fools they were. Let me back up and explain how we ended up here. My husband died 3 years ago. Suddenly, heart attack at 36, left me with 2 kids and mountains of medical debt. I went from being a comfortable middle-class family to barely scraping by. I worked 2 jobs. One as an office manager during the day and waitressing nights and weekends. We moved from our house to a small apartment, sold our second car, cut every expense we could. My kids went from private school to public school, from dance classes and sports to free activities at the library. It was hard, humiliating, even going from having enough to counting every dollar. My daughter Emma took it the hardest at first. She was 8 when her dad died, old enough to understand what we'd lost, but she adapted, became resourceful, stopped asking for things she knew we couldn't afford, started helping more around the house. And somewhere in that struggle she discovered science, started reading books from the library about chemistry and physics, watching educational videos online, doing experiments with household items. She was obsessed and brilliant. Her teachers noticed, started giving her advanced materials, entering her in competitions. My sister-in-law Monica, my late husband's sister, she'd always been the successful one. Married a hedge fund manager, lived in a mansion, wore designer clothes, sent her kids to elite schools, and after my husband died, she made these grand gestures of helping us. Donated her kids' old clothes. Invited us to family dinners where she'd make subtle comments about our situation. It must be so hard managing on your own. Have you thought about getting a better job? Maybe you should consider moving somewhere cheaper, always phrased as concern but really just judgment. She invited us to this dinner party, said, it would be good for my kids to see how successful people live, to have aspirations. I almost said no because I knew it would be uncomfortable, but Emma begged me. Said she wanted to bring something to contribute, spent all Saturday baking cupcakes with the ingredients. I'd bought chocolate ones with homemade frosting, decorated them carefully. She was so proud. Carrying that container into Monica's house. The dinner was exactly what I expected. Monica's wealthy friends. Their accomplished teenagers. Everyone dressed perfectly, talking about their vacations and investments and which Ivy League schools their kids were applying to. And then there was us, me in my one decent dress. My kids in their best clothes that still looked cheap next to everyone else's, trying to blend in, trying not to feel less than. When it came time for dessert, Monica brought out this elaborate cake from an expensive bakery. I had this specially made by the best pastry chef in the city, she announced. And then Emma quietly brought out her container of homemade cupcakes. I made these, I thought we could have them too. And the room got awkward. Monica's friend Patricia actually laughed. Oh, how sweet, homemade, that's so quaint. Another woman said, we don't usually do homemade desserts at formal dinners, dear, but it's nice you tried. And Monica, my own sister-in-law, said, Emma, honey, maybe next time just let the adults handle desserts. Some things require a certain level of sophistication. I watched my daughter's face fall, watched her carefully put the container down, watched her shrink into herself, and I was about to say something, about to defend her. But then Emma did something that surprised me. She straightened up, looked at Monica calmly and said, that's okay, Aunt Monica. I understand not everyone appreciates effort, by the way. Did you hear I won something last week? Monica barely looked up from cutting her fancy cake. That's nice, dear. Won what? A school prize? Emma smiled, the small knowing smile I'd never seen before. The National Junior Science Competition. I competed against 600 students from all 50 states. My project on sustainable water filtration using household materials took first place. The prize was a full scholarship to Sterling Academy. The room went completely silent. Sterling Academy was one of the most prestigious private schools in the country, the kind of school Monica had been trying to get her own kids into for years. The kind of school that cost $60,000 a year, the kind of school that didn't just accept anyone. Patricia's fork literally stopped halfway to her mouth. Monica's face went pale. You got into Sterling Academy? That's impossible. The acceptance rate is like 3%. Emma nodded calmly. 3.2% actually. But they have a special program for gifted students who show exceptional promise in STEM fields. My scholarship covers full tuition, room and board, and they're providing a laptop and all materials. I start in the fall. They said my water filtration project could potentially help millions of people in developing countries access clean water. National Geographic wants to feature it in their Youth Innovators section. The silence was deafening. Everyone at that table was staring at my 11-year-old daughter, who they just mocked for bringing homemade cupcakes. Patricia tried to recover. Well, that's wonderful, dear, congratulations. But her voice was tight, embarrassed. Monica looked like she'd been slapped. Why didn't you tell us? We had no idea Emma was so accomplished. I spoke up for the first time, voice cold. You never asked. You've spent 3 years making assumptions about us based on our bank account, judging us for being poor, treating us like charity cases. But you never once asked Emma about school, about her interests, about what she was working on. You just assumed that because we don't have money we don't have value. Monica's husband tried to change the subject, but Emma wasn't done. She pulled out her phone. Actually, the awards ceremony is on the Sterling Academy website. Would you like to see? The dean of students called me a once-in-a-generation mind, said students like me are why the school exists. And she showed her phone around the table, the website with her photo, the article about her project, the quotes from judges calling her work revolutionary. I watched these wealthy, accomplished adults, people who spent the evening peacocking about their achievements and their children, as private schools and test scores, realize that this little girl they just condescended to had accomplished more at 11 than their teenagers had in 17 years. That she'd done it with nothing but library books and determination while they poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into their kids' educations for lesser results, and they had no idea what to say. Monica's son, a 17-year-old who'd been bragging about getting into a decent state school, looked physically ill. Patricia's daughter, who'd been going on about her debate team trophy, actually got up and left the room. The entire energy shifted from them looking down on us to them trying to process that they just humiliated a literal genius. Monica tried to salvage it. Emma, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. We should celebrate this. This is wonderful news for our family. And I cut her off. It's wonderful news for Emma. For our little family that you've been looking down on. And we don't need you to celebrate it. We're doing just fine on our own. We came tonight because you invited us, because I thought maybe you'd finally see us as equals instead of charity cases. But clearly that's not possible, so we're going to leave now. Emma picked up her container of cupcakes, untouched, and said something that I'll never forget. You know what's sad? These cupcakes took me 5 hours to make. I used a recipe I found and modified to work with what we could afford. I calculated the exact ratios to get the texture right. It was basically chemistry. I made them because I wanted to contribute something meaningful. But you all judged them without even trying one because they were homemade, because they weren't expensive. You decided they weren't good enough based on where they came from. Just like you decided I wasn't worth your time because of where I come from. But the difference is I know what I'm worth. I don't need your validation. I just feel sorry for your kids because if this is what you teach them, that value equals money and status, they're going to miss out on so much. We left, walked out of that mansion into the parking lot. Got into our 10-year-old car, and Emma started crying, not sad crying. Why are people like that, Mom? Why does money make them think they're better? I pulled her close. Because they've never had to struggle, never had to prove themselves with anything but their bank account. They don't understand that real worth comes from who you are, not what you have, and baby, you just proved that in a way they'll never forget. The story spread through the family fast. Monica called the next day trying to apologize, said she wanted to make it up to Emma, wanted to host a proper celebration. I told her we'd pass, that Emma didn't need her approval or her performative support. My mother-in-law called, embarrassed, said she'd raised her daughter better than that she was proud of Emma. I appreciated that, at least someone in that family understood. Emma started at Sterling Academy 2 months later, full scholarship, surrounded by other brilliant kids thriving in ways she never could have at regular school. She called me after her first week, so excited. "Mom, everyone here is like me. Nobody cares what car your parents drive or where you live. They just care about ideas and learning and creating things. This is where I belong." And she was right. She did belong there. Not because of money or connections, but because of her mind. Her work, her determination. She belonged there more than any of Monica K's kids ever would, even if they could buy their way in. Because Emma had earned it, had proven herself against 600 other kids while dealing with grief and poverty and people constantly underestimating her. I'm a single mom working 2 jobs, driving old car, living in a small apartment, but my daughter is going to one of the best schools in the country, working on projects that could change the world. Being recognized for her actual abilities, and every time I think about that dinner, about those people laughing at her homemade cupcakes, I smile because 10 minutes later the room went silent and they realized they'd just mocked someone extraordinary. Here's what I learned watching my daughter handle that situation. Class isn't about money. Intelligence isn't about expensive schools. Worth isn't about status. You can have all the wealth in the world and still be small-minded. You can have nothing and still be brilliant. And the people who judge others based on what they have instead of who they are will always be the ones who lose in the end, because they can't see value until it's validated by institutions or price tags. They laughed at my daughter's cupcakes, never knowing they were made by hands that were solving problems they couldn't comprehend. Never knowing those hands belonged to someone who accomplished more at 11 than they had in lifetimes of privilege. And when they found out, when the room went silent, it wasn't just because they were embarrassed. It was because they realized they'd revealed exactly who they were, and it wasn't impressive. If you enjoyed my story, please like and subscribe and share this with anyone who's ever been underestimated, judged, or dismissed because of their circumstances, because here's the truth. Real excellence doesn't need expensive packaging. Real brilliance shines through regardless of resources. And the people who can't see that are telling you about their limitations, not yours. My daughter brought homemade cupcakes to a table of people with expensive taste and no substance, and she left that night knowing her worth while they were left questioning theirs, and that's the real victory.